This is the start, game 7 throughout the overall FNCS, but game 1 on the day. And I hope, Levin, that everybody had taken the time after 6 games have ended to rewatch a lot of the VODs, rewatch a lot of the plays, the goods, the bads, and kind of take everything in stride, fix a lot of those mistakes, but figure out a way to replicate a lot of the successes. And Queasy and Thomas is going to be one of the biggest teams on that list to figure out what went right, replicate it, and what went wrong, and fix it very, very quickly, because they are triple contested yet again.
A bit of a scare here as well, because it looks like there's another team jumping into the fray. On social media before, Jake Buka and Cringe, who said they was having some problems over towards Lavish Lair, potentially hinted at landing towards Mount Olympus, and maybe not doing so here in game 1. Again, a spot that's triple contested, adding another team into the mix. Jacob doesn't seem the wisest.
Yeah, and throughout the day yesterday, you saw this fight kind of develop. You saw it kind of advance, went from right out of the gates, players trying to go for surge, to things gradually slowing down, and it caused just a weird dynamic over on that side of the map. But this one for sure, this is one I'm excited for.
Absolutely, and so Cringe and Jake Book are not landing at Mount Olympus. It doesn't look like they've landed here at Lavish Lair either, so uncontested for Cringe and Noms today. Again, that changes the dynamic of how they have to play the game. They don't have that early damage for Surge that they were benefiting so fruitfully from yesterday.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that we were kind of talk about as days progress. People switch drop spots, kind of play a little bingo, some would say, to see which way they're going to drop, as Veno looking like he was going to get aggressive right out of the gates on Podesai and Snazy. Unfortunately, he does choose to disengage, and by looking at the minimap, I really don't see Tayson or Veno's teammate anywhere, so he probably had to get a couple of those shots that he needed, disengage back on up, and as we tune into Veno, yeah, Tayson is lost already. So the struggles that Veno and Tayson for the early game will continue here today.
A very tough start. This is not how Veno would have wanted to be going into game 1, especially considering these guys ultimately have to have a big comeback day, right? A lot of expectations going into the weekend where that these guys would be near the top of the leaderboards. It hasn't quite panned out that way. And Podesai and Snazy, I'm sure, will be incredibly motivated to continue to put a stain on this FNCS for Veno and Tayson. Yeah, they're fully just chasing. they don't want to give these guys a chance to get back into this game at all.
I mean, you can imagine how hard it is to kind of take down Tayson once. Now imagine Veno gets the reboot. You got to take him down yet again. But I think Podesai and Snazy know, judging by their loadout, the lack of materials, there's only so far you can actually go on a chase like this before it becomes more and more risky, and you really don't get anything out of it, even if you do get that elimination onto someone like Veno. So I do like the heads-up play for them to kind of disengage, backtrack in their steps, and finish looting up so they can have a more successful early in the mid-game.
Fibo and Valry in the scrim gate area. And Malabuka isn't happy about it one bit. He wants to try and push them away. Mustache on the other side of Grim has initiated that boss fight, and so he's eager to get the medallion and the shotgun. He knows just how powerful it can be for them in fights like this one.
I just want to see them convert just a little bit more on having that medallion and being able to stretch it just a little bit further into these end games. Yeah, they got 7th while contested, but having such an arsenal at your disposal, you got to be able to kind of take advantage just a little further. And this fight between them two is kind of very, very standard. They don't necessarily go 50-50, take each other out. Velry and Firebro do tend to kind of hide up towards the top, build up, and then that's where they kind of play the rest of their game out. Bettini and Chap, another surprising duo, lighting up the elimination feed, not only almost all day yesterday, but throughout the semifinals in general. They're one of the teams that we kind of looked at, maybe a top 5, potential to win it all. And with 1.5 point multiplier here today, they're definitely going to have to pick up the pace, not only in eliminations, but be a little bit more successful, making it farther into these games. Absolutely.
When you look at the fighting prowess of Chapintini, they pose a threat in box fights against anybody. Cringe and Noms now getting aggressive towards Jakey and Twy, and I think we expected to see this, right? When you're playing out of Lavish Lair and you're not contested, you got to be eager for Surge. You have to roam out of your POI to deal some damage, and that's exactly what they'll do here. Cringe and Noms are one of the better fighting teams, and so they won't shy away from a fight.
especially with how well they were doing yesterday. You kind of spoke on it and touched on it a little bit, and that's how you start to build that confidence. It's very, very important for a lot of the teams and players here today to be able to channel that momentum from day one and continue it on here in day two. And I like the idea because not only are they getting surge from finding a team like Jake and Twy, but they're a potential bunker in this direction as well. Yes, some other teams might try to move in this direction, but at least if you're able to take this team out early, you see nobody else in the minimap trying to third party this could be a huge opportunity. But Noms just over peaks, he gets sniped, and this is their green light to go.
And these kind of mechanical errors can be the difference maker. If they go down now, again, they start looking at the advantage they have in the leaderboard. It starts dwindling away. But Cringe won't be thinking about that right now. He'll be thinking about how he can keep his team in the game.
Yeah, Noms really has only one decision. As soon as he went down, he knew he couldn't save him. So he just quickly disengaged using the Flowberry Fizz to create as much distance as possible. Twy just, oh my. Reading that play like a book. He knew he was spraying the covers. He knew he was going to break it. And just perfect timing. And you can see that today getting a little bit more active right out of the gates. Trexer, Glubsheet being forced in a defensive position by Relvis and Buell. Great shots to really start this fight out. But the longer this one takes, unlike the other one on the other side of Lavish Layer, there are more third and fourth party potentials moving in and closing the distance themselves.
The Buell and Relvis did incredibly well last games. And I think a lot of people questioned how they're going to fare with zones that maybe aren't as favorable. I think yesterday, if you had to say which team had the most favorable zones across all 6 games, you probably would have attributed that to them. And so now it's time to see where the challenge comes. Or maybe they just keep getting zones, Jacob, and we're laughing at the end of the 12 games. Either way, they'll be prepared. And this fight is the first step to doing so. Trexer taking a big chunk of damage. And that's clearly coming from Eclipse and Dexy, the third party in the distance.
Yeah, over from Rebels Roost, they're making their presence known finally, and they know that knock is coming in just now, and they get the double elimination as Eclipse persistence actually pays off, taking out Trexer as well, but a whole nother team. Finn and his duo just now moving in, kind of forcing a lot of displacement here out of this fight, where they once thought they were safe, where they were fighting another team, a couple of third parties, and another shot coming in from the distance to Buell. It's just going through so much right now when things were looking so good a moment ago.
And the Buell and Relvis will be forced to watch this game. And I mean, this right now, Jacob, is the biggest test for teams who, you know, you would put in that sort of category of, oh, they've surprised us on day one. They're doing much better than expected. How do they respond to the adversity of having a hitch in the road early on?
I like the way you asked the question, because it's easy to stay positive and stay confident when things are going well. But how do you pick yourself back up when things aren't necessarily going your way? And that's going to be the first test I think they'll be facing all weekend, because they're also one of the teams that didn't really have to deal with Surge because they were so proactive, especially with that off-spawn fight. As you switch on over, one that was kind of quick out of the gates, a player getting eliminated. Veno able to get Tayson back. We saw Tayson was down and out early on. Veno was able to disengage far away from fencing fields at that. So interesting decision enough for him to not only get the reboot, but for them to backtrack all the way back on over to fencing fields. And already with shots like that, it's paying off.
I think one of the key things I want to see from Veno and Tayson is them sort of just pop off, frag out. Miniminer was highlighting just a lack of refreshes, a lack of eliminations in the deeper stages of the game. I think some of their problems come from the earlier parts of the game, right? Mid-game, being able to get to end-game stacked, but we know what Veno can do when he's on his best. He's one of the most prolific fighters we've ever seen. Surprise, surprise. Vanyak and Swizzy here in the storm, using the wings to their benefit just to get around. I mean, this is a recipe for success we've seen a bunch of teams tap into, and it is definitely benefiting our first place team right now.
Yeah, and just the way players are able to kind of utilize it. Pause for a second on one thought. Cringe still looking like he's going through a battlefield, the one that kind of left over from Lavish Layer, trying to scrap together whatever he can to continue to spread that distance. But I just wonder, does he even know that they're still kind of eyeing him, they're tracking him? Doesn't look like they're going to go after him this time around, so Cringe does have a legitimate chance to get Noms back into the game. but it's definitely not going to be easy because he's moving closer and closer in towards the zone to where a lot of the people that landed towards the north will end up in this position just like the players towards the east.
100%. A reboot's going to be hard to pull off here, though. You can see on the minimap all the teams sort of around. Jakey and Twy, I think, will probably be distracted by the bunker, but some of those other teams towards the west, they hear this reboot go off, they will be eagerly awaiting.
Sangil and, well, I was going to say Marius, but it looks like he's already taken down. Underworld not necessarily faring well for this duo so far on the day yesterday. They've had a ton of shines and shining moments to where you know they have what it takes to pop off. It's just continuously game after game in a contested drop like the Underworld. They haven't been able to put it together on a consistent basis. So I'm just hoping for day 2, even though Marius is already down, Sangil, there's a lot of space for him in and around the Underworld for him to attempt the reboot and get his teammate back. I just want to see them start to pick up that pace that we know that they can achieve.
And again, more of those Storm plays. Analysts broke it down. This is what Queasy and Thomas are doing to just bypass mid games completely, Jacob. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these northern zones, northwestern zones. If you're a team like Thomas and Queasy, rotating all the way there from Mount Olympus, it's tough, right? You end up using a lot of materials, a lot of your shields to get by. So they've decided, yeah, we don't want to do all that. We're just going to stay in the Storm, use the wings to get into better spots throughout the Storm. We can go through POIs like this here in Reckless Railways and pick up some extra loot, some extra shields. We can cap our materials as well as we go by. And then we can get into, you know, 6th, 7th zone, stacked, all the mats in the world and still be up on Surge. I mean, it's pretty ingenious from them. I think the big thing was over the past week, Queasy has emphasized how he's just figured out how to play the game, right? A lot of their poor performances this season, he was sort of playing tournaments blind, didn't know what to do, but now they have a better idea, better understanding. Near miss there from Seti.
What's surprising enough, 288 points, how well Seti and Cammy are doing. It's sometimes they're in situations like this where you almost can count them out. Things look bleak, staying so far in zone, and even one of them down, playing as a solo. But so far this weekend, they have shown so much adversity, so much resilience to come back from situations like this. And the reboot, and you were kind of mentioning Queasy and Thomas figuring things out, adapting, and I think that was one of the biggest things that a lot of teams have figured out, that we're not going to heal-offs as consistent as we were before. So instead of being one of those teams where you have to get out of zone, you get on the congested ed, things don't work out for you, you're now able to stay in the zone much longer than you ever have from some of these seasons past, which gives them a lot more time to think and figure out these strategies. And you give teams like Queasy, Thomas, Seti, Cammy, the OGs, the more experienced players time to think. I think that is what's going to be the downfall for other players in the lobby today, when you give them opportunities, when you give them time.
100%. I think the big thing now, though, is that who's been hitting the VODs last night, right? If you went into them, you would be able to see what these guys are doing. If other teams decide to start playing Storm as well, which I think we may see, becomes, you know, less of an advantage, right? Now you're worried about someone being behind you while you're in the Storm. And it gets so messy. That's the beauty of the grand finals, right? The meta, the game, it evolves as we head through these 12 games. Cringe still kicking it here as a solo. And yeah, my suspicions were correct. It wasn't going to be as simple as picking up that reboot card. He's going to have to fight this one out solo. And the fight against Cheeps won't be easy. Cheeps never shies away from a box fight. Oh, do they know? They're wary of it. They place the wall before they go through.
Very, very careful. Great move by Crims, but he finally gets boxed off. One of the pathways is going to be cut off, but he's quickly thinking on the fly. And Cringe, the only downfall here is he hasn't really been able to get too many opportunities to get Surge, but the fact that he's been alive as a solo for so long, running around, playing a huge game of hide and seek where they finally find him on the other side. That's Cheeps and Turtle that land such a good first shot, but he's ready to start fighting back, no longer trying to run around and take the fight to Cheeps as he lands just another good shot, backing down his opponent, and he's making Cheeps and Turtle second guess. Is this a fight they want to start and finish, or is this a situation they want to run from, as Cringe once again lands a shot on the run?
Cringe is playing this phenomenally. He's really playing like someone who knows the POI, and they just ran out of patience. Cheeps and Turtle decided, okay, we need to just try pinch this guy. I'm tired of just trying to run at him. And when they go for the pinch, he realizes, okay, wait, they're both playing as solos. Let me try isolate a 1v1 and deal significant damage onto them. Forces them back a bit.
Cammy goes down, but just by judging that Cammy even had a chance to go down, at least said he had a reboot opportunity. He got his teammate back, gave them a fighting chance, but that one is going to hurt. We talked about the 1.5 times multiplier. They are definitely one of the teams you look at have a consistent day. They started with 288 points in 3rd place, so they can only go down from here. And that puts a lot more pressure on them in the last 5 games of the day for them to really pick up the aggression, pick up the pace, and try to figure out a way to get those eliminations. Joan Trulex, team that's just been progressively getting better. I think we all know what type of performance they had throughout the semifinals. Really waiting to the last moment to punch their ticket to Grands, but since then they have not looked back. Seems like a lot of their experience, a lot of their planning was to come into a set lobby just like this. They found at least 1 elimination so far. Even though Storm Surge is active, it's all about staying above that threshold, whether it's by 300 or 1. You want to give yourself that chance to not have to just run around and put yourself into desperate situations looking for Storm Surge yourself. But glad to see that Noms is back in the game. Enough running around the map for Cringe. He's given himself a chance now to bring this duo power back into the game, in which they've been using almost all weekend long to give themselves that 2nd place.
I mean, you use the word power. I think that's generous, right? Well, how much power would they really have? Lack of materials, lack of loot. Down on Surge as well. They might just be easy pickings for any team that is sitting here on the edge of zone. They're going to have to really get creative to push themselves back into this game. You know, that lightning bolt in hand, I think Cringe might just have some interesting intentions here. Yeah, he's looking to cook up something. He has his eyes set on ruining someone's game, and it might just be Vico and Pinks.
Yeah, any damage is better than none. He actually lands that 3rd and final Thunderbolt. About 80 shield. That's going to get him above the threshold. And like I said, whether if it's 6 or 600, that's where you want to be, because instantly they fall below. Storm Surge activates. Down goes Noms. Unfortunate circumstances for Cringe, because now he's once again left as a solo. The only blessing he has going for him right now is he is center zone on this 50-50. He just needs a moment to breathe, an opportunity to put that DMR to use to try to get some shots at anybody rotating in.
And again, I don't want to harp on this, right? But that was the biggest question about them. Now, today, uncontested. How will they fare with Surge? And the first game isn't looking as sweet as it was yesterday, right? So either this becomes a reoccurring problem for them, or maybe just a blip in the long 12 games we have. A replay of Malabuka here over towards Grim Gate. Fighting as he does best, takes down the other Cringe. But he's still playing this one as a solo. Mustache is down.
Isn't necessarily too bad of a situation, because while everybody else here is rotating the zone, trying to get their spot so they're not the last ones left, that's given a lot of space and a lot of freedom for Malabuka to actually go for the reboot or reposition with any of these launch pads on top of Reef Island to a reboot that he so chooses. As we tune on board 1st place, Swizzy, Vanya just going through a little bit of struggles here, getting targeted around the lobby. It does look like they're going to be able to hold their ground momentarily. 500 damage above that Storm Surge threshold. They really have nothing to worry about other than the rotations.
Yeah, and I've loved watching these guys play. So aggressive. A lot of the time it feels like watching what Malabuka and Mustache would be like if they decided to be a height team, right? And commit to that type of play style. Very ruthless, very forceful, but it works out.
I'll just toe tagging some players, just getting damaged any way that he can. And this is where you're going to see it really come into play. As this zone does move a little bit up those mountains, you see the flow berries, you see the wings of Icarus, something that's been popularized so much this weekend. That's going to be the biggest tool in their tool belt, and it's been the biggest tool with the zones that they've had all 6 games yesterday in finding that success. Now Balabuka, we saw him already by himself. He was able to at least find 1 elimination, help in terms of Surge, and he lines up another snipe and another knock. So it's really up to him if he wants to go for it, because he's created so much space for himself and he's commanded so much respect, but only so much as how he instantly goes in, along with the help of the Frizzy, to take down Malabuka and end the Mustache Malabuka run in game 1.
Back to the drawing board for those two. Benno and Tayson in a much less congested spot. Not the pressures of having a bunch of teams around them. They can just rotate towards zone relatively freely. But that doesn't mean that they are sitting in a better spot in the context of the game, because you can see here below on Surge, materials aren't incredibly strong. Could do with a bit more brick Venno, but the rest not too bad. He'll get some of that as he rotates his way on in. But where they're going to get their damage from becomes the question. Running towards congested. As they get towards the safe zone, there will be a bunch of teams awaiting them.
Yeah, there's not going to be too many opportunities. They might have to like choose up next to a team, box up, try to get damage that way. But any opportunity of players trying to dash and fly through the sky, they're going to take it. 61 below, which isn't a ton of damage, especially for a team like Venno and Tayson. And you wonder how they got in this situation. I think it's because Tayson going down early, leaving Venno to scramble around and try to get the reboot, wasted a ton of time in which they would normally use to get Surge.
Yeah, and Venno is so prolific with the sniper. Was one of the top snipers last season. Only has one shot left. And so we need to put it to good use. Lines it up. Doesn't quite connect onto Pixie. And that might just be a sign of just how things have gone for them so far. So close, but yet so far when it needs to hit the mark. They have some shields they can use, but ultimately out healing at this point in the game. You got to start thinking of where do we get the damage. It only becomes a reoccurring problem.
Yeah, because even though 2 players need to go down before it deactivates now, Venno was hoping he wasn't going to be one of those 2. Big snipe. Tayson goes down immediately after. Great plays by Twy to really make that happen, because the hunted have now become the hunters in that situation.
And look what we have here. With Deal and Reason. One of the most prolific teams on their day in EU. Way above on Surge. And looking to try and have one of their classic big end games where they have high eliminations. 7 already in this game is not too shabby, especially with just how much more valuable the points are today. Maybe we can get a look into how they picked up one of those elims. Yeah. Taking down Swizzy, one of the top dogs. So that now makes this end game that much harder for Vanya.
It's like they're cooking up the perfect recipe in order to close the gap. You're getting a little bit more aggressive, getting those eliminations, and then you take down first place, or at least half of it, leaving Vanya by himself. You see him just bound to very little builds as well. The biggest thing is the little charges he does have left on those Wings of Icarus, and because he's done so much damage so early on with his duo at the time, he doesn't have to worry about Storm Surge, so he's not really making any risky peaks, or at least ones that he doesn't have to until he has to rotate. 7 eliminations for Vidal and Reason. They're primed up and ready to go, and this is a way to start off a comeback for an FNCS championship. Have a great start to the day, but Thomas is tagged up, trying to rotate forward along with Queasy. They're figuring out a way to make things work. You talked about their adaptability throughout the day on game 1 through 6. It's about figuring out how to mimic that here. While everybody else is hitting the vase, you got to make sure that you make it count yourself.
Chapintini not looking too bad at all. This might be the game for them to go up on height. They need a couple more materials though before they can really be comfortable up there. Thomas and Queasy won't have any high intentions with the loadouts they're working in right now. This is about trying to get a refresh, trying to get some materials that can keep them in this game that bit longer.
Team just hiding in the bush. They got a couple more big bush bombs as well, waiting for the last moment to where they use the wings yet again, and that gives them so much distance to cover, but Queasy gets lost, separated from Thomas. They saw him land in the bush. They're just firing aimlessly from above, forcing him all the way down low into the water, which is a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because now Thomas able to get those dashes, but without very many builds, forced to use the big bush bomb, and he is just jumping around the water, trying to stay alive and try to get as many extra placement points as he can.
He's found a bit of space, a bit of composure, but I don't know what he'll really be able to do with it. Such a dire situation. Players all around, and eventually Thomas will fall. It's Fastroki and Robbab who have decided to take height in this game, and we'll see how they can use it.
Yeah, going up that mountain, that's going to give equal opportunity for anybody to Flowberry Fizz their way up. A bounce back for Vaniac on the zone. He's able to get the blessing of the elimination. He's just trying to survive the onslaught. What little builds that he was able to get instantly being poured out to try to protect himself. And once again, he is fresh out, 32 HP. He just needs seconds here, Levin, to pop the Flowberry Fizz to give himself a fighting chance.
When your teammate goes down at the start of the end game, a lot of the time, it looks like an impossible task to stay up. Vaniac has already done a great job to get here, but can he get any more? Can he hold on to that lead? Keep as many placement points as he can. He's running about on all these layers. Nobody's noticed him just yet. He's right next to Howley. They've gone out of that box. He's safe for just a couple more seconds here, Jacob.
Yeah, quickly crouches, trying to hide as much audio as possible, going through unnoticed. These placement points are huge with that point multipliers. Vaniac trying to keep that stranglehold over that first place. A couple more teams and players going down low on the low ground, but he has been finally spotted out by that high ground. But again, Levin, he's going through unnoticed.
This is an absolute masterclass of how to play hide and seek in a Fortnite endgame. I mean, he has survived for much longer than he should have been allowed to stay in this one. Finally gets chunked down a bit, and that's going to force him all the way onto low, but the dashes allow him to move around a bit quick. 9 HP will be his doom. He goes down. Vidil and Reason will be the ones to pick that one up.
And finally finish the job because they're the ones who originally took down Swizzy as well, pushing themselves into a top 3 situation, already having 13 eliminations as a team. They're ready to seal the deal, make it 14 as Dastru gets taken down, but attacks from above. Reason finding some struggles. It's Fastroki, it's Robbab dropping down at the perfect moment to take the game by storm.
They really capitalized on what was a chaotic endgame. The fighting at the end was so electric. They said we gotta get in on all that action, and they did it at the perfect time. Wow, Robbab and Fastroki are always a threat on the height when it's available. We haven't seen them much so far this weekend, but they swoop here in game number 7.
And you got to give them all the credit in the world for that patience, not dropping down too early to join that mess on the low ground. They already knew they had it in the bag, and they just needed to seal the deal, in which they did with ease. And that's going to be huge. 1.5 times multiplier. The win alone was 100 points in itself.
I mean, again, when you're looking at that end game, Jacob, it was huge from Vidil and Reason below. The pop-off they had, but Fastroki was the one that put it to an end there for Reason and Vidil. He swooped in at just a perfect time, and they didn't even actually get that final elimination, right? It just sort of all fell into place for them. A big game for Robbab and Fastroki, who are another team that is fighting their way back into this competition.
Yeah, and you got to give them a huge round of applause, because that is how you start to build that confidence. You start to build that momentum. There is still 5 more games left to play today, and you cannot fizzle out early.
Well, let's break down all that action and see how the leaderboard has already started to shake up. Frankie, what you got for us?